Hey everyone, in this video I'll be taking you through a recap of my recent trades, showing you the analysis I used to frame this idea and what the negative and positive confluences were. The purpose of this video is to give you insight into my strategy, be visible with all of the trades so you can follow along with my journey, and the price action analysis so you can take the value away from this and improve yourself. So if you're interested in that, then stick around and let's get into this. So I'll briefly start us off here on the 1 hour, just to give us a bit of a higher time frame picture. What we can see is the previous day we mitigated this higher time frame POI. Since then we had this massive bearish move down, and then overnight and into Asia we had this corrective pullback creating a range, right? There was also this 1 hour fair value gap as a POI, and then below here, which is DXY, we obviously had the same bullish push and a pullback creating the same range. Now below, as you can see, we had our 1 hour fair value gap and 4 hour fair value gap, which is the same as up here. This would be the 1 hour fair value gap line if I was to imitate DXY. So immediately, because this was a short trade, I was shorting EU. The first negative that we could see here is that, of course, we had 1 hour and 4 hour fair value gaps which weren't completely mitigated. Same as with EU, we'd only partially mitigated this, right? So there was still this area here that could attract price and pull it in. So that was the major negative that I identified and traded against. Also, of course, the recent trend with the high low was bullish, right? So if I'm shorting, even though it's only temporarily, I have to admit to myself it's against the overall higher time frame trend, and we have this POI here which isn't fully mitigated to attract price. Now on the other hand, of course, this is still a higher time frame POI and this is still a higher time frame POI. Okay, so those are areas that are tradable if the lower time frame breaks down and allows me to trade them. We can also see we swept some liquidity internally, but we'll see that on the lower time frame. So on the M15 time frame now, what we can see is we had our Asia range here. We had a lovely pool of liquidity trend line below. We swept Asia ever so slightly. I would prefer a bigger sweep, but we swept it nonetheless and had this big bearish M15 breaker structure, right? So we broke these lows by sweeping these highs. So now for me, this is a nice strong high. This is our order block here, though without a fair value gap. So that's untraditional for me. But that's my confluence, is that we swept internal buy side liquidity and broke down. Okay, we did the same on DXY. We swept their Asia lows and broke above with a breaker structure on the M15. And I love it when the M15 breaks down because it usually is a better sign, right? Because it's a higher time frame. On DXY, we also had a clear order block here with a fair value gap, right? The fair value gap we didn't have here. I chose to trust in my confluences that there was the lower time frame order block on DXY, even though the fair value gap wasn't present on Euro USD. We had a somewhat corrective pullback, right? We didn't get loads of bullish momentum after sweeping some of these lows. That was also a smaller confluence as a negative because we have now taken internal sell side liquidity. We'd prefer if these lows remained intact, of course, but there are more lows to continue to go lower, and we didn't get a massive bullish push from there, but it's just something to note. Same with DXY, of course, we took some buy side liquidity there before the pullback, but it's always inevitable that you're going to take some sort of lows before a pullback, right? I'll drop down to the M5 briefly just to show you how the pullback looked down there. Of course, it was a lot more corrective. We could have an inducement here. It looked nice in my opinion. We had clear M5 break as well. Price action, I would have loved to have bigger bearish candles, you know, for more momentum. But overall on the M15, it looked good to me. And I was ready to go short from this area here with the negatives that I had already mentioned and that we was in the discount of this leg now. However, price can continue with the order flow. Like I said, we mitigated partially this higher time frame POI and broke down on the lower time frames. So that gives me the base to my trade to continue short and head for the previous daily high on DXY and the previous daily low on EU, which looked good considering all of the sell side liquidity that was available. Now my stop loss, however, was just below the previous low created during London before the pullback for 3%, 5 pip stop, 15 pip target, and it's just conservative. 3% is usually what I like to aim for. Didn't need to go for the previous daily low. It was unnecessary for me for what's a B grade, I would say short. You know, it had its negatives, so it wasn't like an A plus where I think to stretch it out and be against the trend. So I'll just play this forward so you can see how this went. Of course, price initially rejected, and then of course we got that big bullish push against me. So clearly we've gone to fill in this higher time frame gap, same on DXY. So that trade was wrong and failed, and I took the loss for that. At the end of the day, the negatives prevailed. Price wasn't ready to go short at this time. So on to the second trade. This one ended as BE. We're on the M15 chart, and again, of course, this is EU and this is DXY. So after my initial loss, this caused the loss, right? This bullish movement here. Price created another 15-minute break of structure. Now with the New York Open cycle bias, right, we've taken the highs of London. The stat is about 70% of the time. Price will continue in that same direction in New York. So the New York cycle bias is present. We've got an M15 order block with fair value gap this time. We've got the same on DXY, as you can see. We've got our negatives now of DXY has filled its 1 hour fair value gap, but not its 4 hour. We have almost filled our 1 hour fair value gap on EU, but not completely filled also. And price looks like it's ready to go bullish with the bullish order flow continuing. Also, some of the negatives from the previous trade have now become positives. We are in the discount of the higher time frame leg. We are actually going with the trend, which is bullish, right? So those are two of the other major confluences that are now on our side. However, the same confluence that was a negative with our previous trade, which is this POI, we're kind of just in the middle of it, filling it and not filling it, is the same negative that made this trade a lower quality trade. So we've taken obviously the buy side liquidity from up here as well, but I'm betting on the NY cycle and those other confluences I just mentioned, and our M15 order blocks matching on both DXY and EU to prevail this time. Obviously my management will be doing its job as well. So we'll go down to the 5 minute just to show you what it looked like down there. We had our inducement on the 5 minute and this corrective pullback, and we've gone into our order block, which obviously we also have a 5 minute order block, and we had this lower time frame 5 minute sweep here, which caused that bullish price. We swept these lows here and had this bullish break. Now, as mentioned, these aren't my high quality setups, right? It's okay to take lower quality setups every now and again. We just don't want to make it a habit, and we don't want to make it more than our high quality setups. So obviously in my own journal and in my review, I note this down. I took 2 sort of lower class setups on the same day. So I have to deal with that and journal that to make sure that what I'm doing is correct. The previous 1 hour candle also closed as quite bullish as well. So the 1 hour had a breaker structure to the upside from this range it was creating. So it looked good to continue that, to go to at least a premium or just fill this fair value gap completely. So if I play this out, you can see BE at this point. Price then came and knocked me out. Price fiddled around because at this point now we've mitigated DXY. It was a shame they weren't lined up initially when one M15 OB was mitigated on EU. It wasn't mitigated just yet on DXY. So the trade was still valid in my opinion. But fast forward, price ultimately would have been BE anyway and proved me wrong on the direction, right? We can see that price broke down after taking this liquidity and mostly mitigating these POIs. Okay, so the management did its job there. I'm very happy with the management because that's what my management is there for. That was automatic. I go BE at that certain percentage at 1%, because for me, when trades go to 1% and come back, it usually means I'll lose the trade completely. So there we go. It proved that right, and we saved money in that instance. So I hope you gained value from these. You see a bit more about how my strategy works and what I look for. Reminder, these are not the higher quality setups because of those high time frame negatives, but there's value in there, I hope, for you anyway. So if there's anything that I haven't mentioned that you want further explanation on, then leave a comment, and remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon.